I'm Kim Winters, and I lost my son 2012, March 10th, and it's been 2 years. The most intense emotions that I felt during the earliest points of grief, I think, were just shock. I couldn't believe it. It didn't seem real. I was in denial. I kept thinking I'm just going to wake up and it's going to be a nightmare and it's over and this was just a bad dream. And then I think probably failure. Somehow I missed something. And it wasn't just a small thing. It cost him his life. And I think, you start going over every single decision that you ever made as a parent and second guessing everything. My relationship with God became more important for me. It was a lifeline. Even though at some point I was questioning God and was like, why did this happen? On the same hand, I feel like my faith became stronger. And, there's a Bible verse that talks how he walks us through the valley of the shadow of death. And I believe, at least in my situation, that was for the survivor. Our family members have already gone on, but he was with me during that time. And personally, I think it's the beautiful side of pain. Like I all of a sudden, in my darkest horror and grief, felt God's presence. I felt comfort in the small things. I would see a beautiful flower, and I don't know if it was I was reaching out for anything to keep me sane, but those small acts of kindness from a neighbor or a friend or someone who called me, um, I think those things were a true lifeline for me. And I spent a lot of time in deep prayer and going for walks, and I think a lot of times too, after that initial phase, um, I guess distraction became my best coping mechanism after the initial phase, and I feel that a spiritual sense that God was with me and got me through. And that lasted, I mean, that really did last a long time, probably the first year. But um, when I started to kind of come out of it, I had to make a decision. Am I going to let this beat me? I have 3 other kids that I have to be here for, and obviously God has a plan for this, as horrible as it is. Now what do I do? There's a reason for it, or at least I'm in this situation now, and I think a lot of people, when they're in these situations, try to find a purpose for their pain and a purpose for what's happened, and try to make a difference and try to do something, bring something good out of it. And so I just kind of focused on, okay, now I have to move on. As soon as I found out that my son died, it was kind of an unusual experience. I was at school. I had just left school, and I saw that there was a bunch of phone calls on my phone, and I looked down and I decided to make a phone call to find out what was going on, and I found out that Nick had passed away. My ex-husband wasn't going to tell me. He just said, something bad has happened and you need to get home right away. And I said, if you don't tell me what it is, I'm going to think he's dead. And he said, just come home and then we'll talk about it. And I said, well, then to me that means he's died, so you better tell me what it is. I just kind of instantly had that feeling. And when he told me he died, I felt like I'd been hit by a bomb. Like I just felt like shock and disbelief. And I had just talked to him the night before. He was going to his friend's house. And so I walked away from my car, And just aimlessly, I was walking back into the building and came across some classmates who stopped with me. And I told them what happened, and they stopped and prayed with me. And then I was at Columbus State, so it's not like a Christian school, but my class was from a Christian organization. And then as I went to walk back into the building, I saw a phone call from my very best friend. And I looked down and I picked up the phone, and my friend was there. My very best friend happened to be parked in the same parking lot, was going to Columbus State to drop something off. And I felt like in my darkest hour, there was somebody there to pray with me. In my darkest hour, my best friend shows up out of nowhere. It wasn't planned. It wasn't like, hey, meet me here at this time. She just was there. I felt like, as horrible as this is, somehow there's still a plan. Somehow there's still something that's going to happen here that wasn't, I didn't feel lost in my grief. I felt like there were people there to help me, and people there, instantly there to help me at every direction that I turned. As soon as I went home, there were family members there. There were neighbors who came and brought food, and friends that brought food. And so I was shocked by the kindness of other people. I'm not saying that I was cynical about people before, but I guess I just didn't know the depths of kindness that people would show you in your darkest hour. I had never experienced, so there was some hope there. The first time I went to the SOS support group, I think maybe at that point I was being judgmental. I felt, this is terrible to say, but I felt like that the people that I was talking to at this particular group, everyone there had some serious mental health issues in their family, and it was very obvious. And I felt like mental health is definitely the problem here for these people. And my son's depression wasn't quite as obvious, but depression did run in our family, but it wasn't quite as obvious. I had been living in major denial and didn't want to accept the mental illness that was in my family even, and it caused my son's death. I don't think that it's fair to say someone should be over their grief or be at a certain stage in their grief. I think grief is lifelong. I think once you experience a loss, a significant loss, that is going to be a part of your life no matter what. It's just how are you going to incorporate that grief into your life and still survive and still move forward, best foot forward, not even just trying to survive. You want to survive well, but you can't deny that part of your life. And I spent a lot of years in denial, and this is what it cost me. And so now I have to, I guess, embrace the grief because it's never going to go away, and just learn ways that I can spend a minute thinking about my son and then think of something positive, how I'm going to do, I have plans to do this for us. He can't experience this, but I can. I guess at first you're in such shock that you're not really taking in everything. And at some point you're going to come out of that shock and reality is going to hit, and it's going to be even harder then. But just that you have to keep living your life for the future. You have to keep moving forward no matter how painful it is and what has happened. You still, like I said, have your life to live, and you have other family members who care for you and love you and need you. And at some point you still have your life that you have to finish, and things that you have to do in this life, and lessons that you have to learn, and other people that you have to help, and I guess having plans for your own future is the most important thing.